Hello, I'm Clovis Casali in Paris, and you're watching Correspondence, the show bringing you some of the best reports from our teams around the world. Today, we are at a gym. Along with swimming pools, spas and amusement parks, they are finally allowed to reopen. France is easing its COVID-19 lockdown, much to the delight of sport enthusiasts. This week, we're taking you to Gaza, Cameroon, Puerto Rico, but first to New York. Just like Paris, the Big Apple is seeing a return to normal life. Widespread vaccination and COVID-19 positivity rates dropping mean optimism is rising. Our correspondent Jessica Le Masurier met with New Yorkers, glad of course, but also emotional for some.
We've seen a sharp drop here in New York City in the rate of COVID-19 infections. In fact, it's at its lowest since the start of the pandemic. For the first time this week, there was at least one day when 0 deaths from COVID-19 were reported here in New York City. And that's largely due to the number of people getting vaccinated. More than half of all eligible New Yorkers have now had the jab.
There's a lot of reason to be optimistic. We're in Times Square and everyone's coming back, so it's good to see New York coming back to life.
I mean, we've been here since the worst of it last year, and it was just really dire. To think there's no one died today is amazing, and I heard like the cases are really down, so I think everyone's just feeling very relieved and grateful, and there's like energy in the city again, which is great.
Well, it feels great and hopeful and optimistic, though, you know, if we drop our guard, it could all come back.
Mayor Bill de Blasio says New York City is coming back strong. For the first time in 14 months, live music has returned to the city's subway stations.
This is a beautiful thing to see. You know, I haven't been this way in a while, and to come up from the subway and to hear this is such a beautiful, relaxing thing.
You can even get the vaccine here at Grand Central Station, and you don't have to be a New Yorker. It's available for tourists too. This girl's traveled all the way from Mexico to get it.
I feel so relieved because now I get to go with my grandma and hug her, and that's I'm sorry. I'm really grateful.
With vaccination centres like this, New York City hopes to encourage those who haven't yet got the jab to get it, and also to entice tourists back to the Big Apple.
Now to other US citizens, but with a very particular status. Since 1917, Puerto Ricans can move freely to any of the 50 states of the Union. Every year, tens of thousands leave the Caribbean island looking for better paid jobs in the US. In return, it leads to labor shortages in many farms of Puerto Rico. Laurence Cuvillier and Mathieu Comin sent us this report.
Moises takes great care of his coriander fields, but it's been a headache to find enough workers for the harvest. He says the blame lies with generous aid distributed by the US government since the pandemic started.
With all this aid, people don't even want to work anymore. We put up ads, no one shows up, and if they come, they make no efforts.
But it's a problem that dates back years. In the last decade, 12% of Puerto Ricans have emigrated in search of qualified jobs. The island is emptying, and those who remain reject agricultural work. So Moises imported his labor force. Manuel comes from Chiapas, one of the poorest states in Mexico. He was able to send $1,000 back to his family after 2 months here, a sum he had never been able to earn before.
They are very happy. Now they can eat what we never had before.
Roberto has found a better quality of life here.
In Mexico, I had to work 10 or 12 hours a day, and I was only paid 120 Mexican pesos.
The equivalent of $6, that's less than what he earns in an hour here.
If I could bring my wife and children here, I would do it without hesitation. I see a better future for us here in Puerto Rico.
Moises's 9 Mexican employees will return home in 3 months, but they will definitely be back for the next season. These exchanges are possible thanks to the H-2A temporary job program set up by Washington. Puerto Rico needs 1,500 foreign farm workers to support its limited agricultural sector.
The
most important thing is that we grow our farming sector, because in Puerto Rico it's a sector that represents barely 3% of the economy. And if we have to resort to foreign labour for that, let's do it.
On this other farm, this program has not yet been used, but according to its director, it will be inevitable in the near future.
It's been a year and a half since it became very hard to find employees. I stopped farming about 60 acres of land because of lack of manpower.
A reduction in cultivated land is a problem for an island which produces only 15% of the food it needs, and which spends hundreds of millions of dollars every year importing the rest.
In Gaza, it's not labour shortages, but a lack of all kinds of supplies that's hampering development. The Palestinian territory is in desperate need of construction materials after violence flared up once again. The recent armed conflict between Israel and Hamas fighters has destroyed parts of Gaza. It's now time to rebuild, but it's a real challenge, as you'll see in Gwendoline de Bono's report.
Workers at this bedding factory are still cleaning up the debris after it was hit by an Israeli airstrike during May's conflict. In previous rounds of fighting, it avoided being damaged. This time, though, the manager Jawdat Kudari has to rebuild his whole business.
We will not wait the donors, we will not wait anybody to help. Even we have ordered some of the equipment which is necessary to restart. We will do our best, we will do all of our efforts to be able to get the machines. But there is no time frame. Sometimes it may happen from first time, sometimes it takes 10 times.
Actually receiving shipments is an uphill battle. The Israeli government can at any moment class a material as dual use, meaning it could be used for military purposes.
If they will follow the list of international they will use, the list of the international they will use, I have no problem. But when it comes to Gaza, any item can easily classified as dual use.
A large amount of construction materials are considered dual use and are tracked closely upon arrival in Gaza. Maher Abu Jiba is the head of one of the biggest importers of steel there. The metal is essential for reconstruction, but is also coveted by the military wing of Hamas. For Israel to let Abu Jiba import it, he must film his entire operation 24/7, and UN inspectors must check the recordings. Any blip can be costly.
When we have problem with the electricity, he warning us. Next time he will make the observation. Israeli side, when he saw observation concerning the cameras, he tell us to suspend it also, as a suspicion.
His officers are filmed as well, but Abu Jiba doesn't believe such tight restrictions stop Hamas getting their hands on material.
If the resistance use the material, they can use the material from Egypt, and there is no control. If from Egypt there is no observing, so why we need this mechanism?
Business owners in Gaza say their operations are stifled, and as a result it will take years to repair the damage which was dealt in just a matter of days.
Plastic pollution is one of the major environmental issues the world needs to tackle urgently. It has a devastating impact on our oceans, our beaches, and on marine species. In Cameroon, an NGO is recycling tons of plastic picked up in the Wouri River. Our team of correspondents followed one of these cleanup operations.
Francois, a young environmental activist, has taken up the initiative to collect plastic waste on this river. Thousands of plastic litter floating on the water pose a threat to the mangroves here, home to many species that thrive in the ecosystem.
La quantité de poissons est obligée de diminuer à cause des déchets plastiques qui inondent le fleuve.
n'est-ce pas, asphyxie la mangrove. Si nous ne faisons rien aujourd'hui, la mangrove va disparaître. Les poissons vont disparaître. Et si ces deux éléments disparaissent, c'est le fleuve qui meurt.
In a bid to prevent this disaster, Francois and his team meet a few kilometers away in this district in Douala.
Les déchets plastiques là sont beaucoup plus dangereux.
Plastic bottles, bags and other garbage are carelessly tossed out on the ground. Francois groups organizations together to solve the alarming situation across the city. The aim is to reduce plastic waste in the Wuri River.
Il y a une étroite relation entre la terre et le fleuve. La somme des déchets que la terre produit échoue forcément dans le fleuve. Si rien n'est fait dans les quartiers, le plastique va, n'est-ce pas, continuer à aller vers le fleuve.
Francois and his team have collected about 12,000 kilograms of plastic waste in 5 months. The waste is brought to this factory for recycling. In this workshop, they are transformed into flakes which are in turn used to produce other plastic products. 3,000 tons of plastic are then recycled by Roblin and his team. For the manager of this recycling firm, it is a long-term strategy meant to curb plastic pollution.
Il ne sert à rien de juste collecter les déchets. Il faut aussi qu'il y ait derrière toute une chaîne de création de valeur.
Cameroon produces 600,000 tons of plastic waste every year, a record in Central Africa, but only 20% of this waste is recycled for now.
That's it for this edition of Correspondence. I leave you with images of climbers and other sport lovers so happy to be able to return to gyms. After the reopening of bars, restaurants, museums, France is going into the summer like other countries with so many more smiles on faces. Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned to France 24 for always more international news.